Hi, I'm Superintendent of Public Instruction Chris Reykdal, and thank you for tuning into our weekly video. Normally these come at the end of the week, but as you recall last week, right towards the end there, we had a really powerful and robust discussion about grading, and I promised to give you a result of that contemplation. I asked you to give us direct feedback through the superintendent's inbox, and we got incredible response from around the state. Students in particular, teachers and parents and others, giving us concepts that they think might work and wrestling through themselves sort of the challenges of solving one problem and then maybe creating an inequity in another way. This is one of those where there was no consensus coming into it. It's part of why we really wanted to ask you kind of your feedback on this, and your feedback demonstrates there wasn't consensus either, just really amazing thinking from very different perspectives. So this week we wanted to come to you early because we've landed on an answer to OSPI. Again, not easy, very challenging, but we've tried to draw everyone's major interests together to meet a statewide policy interest that I hope will guide our districts, will make more consistency, but still give them some flexibility. I take very seriously local control, but occasionally in the laws there are opportunities for OSPI to make our own determinations, again, to create statewide consistency and accountability. But first, I want to ground you with where we were last year at this time with grades, because knowing kind of the way Washington typically works with grades might help you understand a little bit of where I landed on this very difficult issue. So we've shown you here the 2019 spring grades. This is last year at this time, whether it's second semester or third trimester, depending on your system. This is high school only. What did grade distribution in Washington look like for our high school kids? Almost 39% of our students got A's, 22.3% B's, about 15% C's, and you can see how it breaks down from there. This other is things like just credit. Some places give credit, no grade at all, just sort of, yep, the student earned their marks. So there's a kind of a mix of stuff that goes on in here. But interestingly, 76% of all students at this time last year earned an A, B, or a C. It's very informative because we're a standards-based state. We want students to demonstrate what they know and the skills to perform effectively at their next step. It isn't so much about volumes of homework and lots of assignments and some of the worksheets I think that you've seen get pretty voluminous over time. It's really about what students know, and our grading systems typically try to reflect that. But the challenges have been immense. Some folks said, hey, go to an A-only system. And if you do that, clearly 40% of our students would line up consistently. And then huge challenges occur for students throughout the grade bands right there. Tough to know whether a D student should also get the A. We heard from a lot of students in particular that they didn't necessarily think that was very fair, but they certainly understood the equity arguments. Others have said just do a pass system, give everyone a pass or an incomplete. Again, if you give everybody a pass, you're essentially treating the students who have performed up here with students who may be right on the edge of struggling and not proficient in a content area. So, you know, we really wrestled with that whole concept. I want to tell you where we landed, walk through the steps, and help you understand how we tried to mine the best concepts out of everybody's idea here to arrive at something that is more focused on a statewide approach but still gives districts local flexibility. Again, I take very seriously my role to only send guidance and framework for the most part, but there's a couple places in the law where OSPI can clearly establish statewide approaches, and our transcripting and our crediting system is one of them, and we're going to take the opportunity to do that. So let's have a look at where we landed on the issues. First and foremost, these are principles that we're going to move forward with for our statewide policy. First and foremost, do no harm. Every student should have the opportunity to take a deep breath right now and know that they're not moving backwards in their grades. Every student will have a chance to improve, so no matter where you find yourself on this continuum right here, there's an opportunity to engage the learning and engage standards, and hopefully very specific narrow standards for your ability to improve. We will give no F grades in the state of Washington at this term this year for any high school students. No F grades, but also no simple passes, or we won't have any of these no credit grades. Again, we're trying to do no harm. There was so much concern about a pass, fail, or a pass no credit system that you'd essentially be trying to decide whether the student really struggling with a concept should get the exact same mark as somebody who's really accelerating. So we really want to balance, though, this idea that students will continue to have the opportunity to earn a grade or improve their grade with the fact that it's really state law that gives teachers the ability to evaluate student learning against standards. And school districts ultimately need to decide their grading policy within the framework we've created. So there's no opportunity here for Fs. We're getting rid of that for sure. But districts will decide whether they're going to do an A through D system and an incomplete, or an A through C and an incomplete option, or an A-B grade and an incomplete option, or they could choose an A only or incomplete option. They'll have to decide that at the local level. These are tough decisions for them, but again, each community has a unique flavor for how they want to approach this. We just wanted a framework that ensured that no student would go backwards, no one would get an F or lose credits, nobody will stand still if they don't want to improve their grade, but districts still have some choice in the system that they're going to choose. We don't think our concept will preclude a district if they want to just do an A or an incomplete, but we definitely heard lots of different perspective about those. So students going to earn a grade, a chance to improve it, no one gets an F, or they'll get an incomplete. All transcripts will reflect this grading cycle, a coronavirus indicator. Again, we know our seniors are working hard to get to the end, and we know our juniors are close to their post-secondary ambitions, but you've got 9th graders and even some 8th graders taking high school level work right now who are struggling through a most remarkable time, and we want anyone evaluating their transcript in the future to know the moment that we were in. So we heard from our business community and we heard from higher education that they really want some designator on the transcript so there's a historic record of this moment, and it will help future transcript evaluators really put this in context. I think that helps to ease everyone's anxiety a little bit around grades at this time. Students who are assigned an incomplete are going to get some options. Districts will make an opportunity for them to make up that incomplete. Again, it's not a fail, it doesn't hurt the GPA, it's not a withdraw, it's not a no credit, it's a sort of pause. Hey, we didn't have enough time or weren't able to engage in the learning the way we want, and so we're going to give that student an opportunity down the road. Summer school, take the class next year or another class similar. Maybe an online offering, maybe an independent study because it's just a concept you have to get or a component of one class rather than the whole class. We have competency-based assessments out there that demonstrate knowledge or sometimes very hands-on tactile skills. That might be an option. And then we really think there's power here in this idea of students moving to the next content level step. So they move from geometry to algebra, they move from one English class to another or a social studies class to the next one. As they perform successfully in that class, backfill the incomplete grade with the grade they got in the next class. That way students don't have to make up a bunch of courses, but they are going to be a year older. They're going to have another expectation for standards and hopefully have success in that class and of course then backfill their grade. Lastly, all students are going to have the opportunity to engage with their learning. So even if you're content with your grade right now, you need to be engaged in the learning, and teachers are prepared to make sure that that happens for you. Now this isn't easy to get to. This is a difficult decision, we've talked about that. Everyone has a way to solve it in part and a way that it creates an inequitable situation. We've tried to give students choice in this to improve their grades. We've tried to make sure that there will be absolutely no failing grades in this process, that any student who doesn't feel like they achieved what they wanted to will have an opportunity to re-engage and learn. We challenge all students to continue learning. And we honor the fact that right now some students are just unable to connect to the learning and they shouldn't be held back or be harmed by that. Now let me be really clear, this is the high school system, including some middle schoolers who are taking high school level work. But for all the rest of our kindergarten through 8th grade students, our expectation is you're going to move forward. Again, you're going to engage in the learning, but if you're in kindergarten through 8th grade or you've got a student or a child in kindergarten through 8th grade, they're going to be tasked with focusing on a few standards, keeping it simple, moving to the next grade, and then we can spend enormous amounts of energy in the coming years to make sure that all of our students have success. But this is really a high school framework right here. Now let me be clear, students, take it seriously. This isn't about grades, but we live in a world where there are consequences for grades and we don't want any harm to be done to your efforts. But this is also mostly about learning. It's not the A or the B or the C that makes you an amazing person as you take your next step. It's the fact that you understand quantitative reasoning, that you can write, that you can communicate, that you can think about systems in a scientific world, that you can engage history and know its context today. It's the PE, the health and the fitness. It's all of those things that made you who you are through your learning and your ability to reflect that learning in your success. We do live in a world of grades and we're trying to honor that in some way, but please focus on the learning. Parents, this is hard. You've been amazing at supporting your student, but we know that you didn't choose to be teachers, most of you, and at this point we want to really simplify what comes home to you, focused on some narrow standards that demonstrate your students' ability to have success next year. And finally, educators, thank you for all of your work. You're taking care of your own kids at home, you're worrying through your own health or that of a loved one, and you're trying to balance the workload of trying to move, say, 30 kids in an elementary grade. Or for you middle and high school students, you might have, teachers, you might have 100 or more students that you're dealing with and trying to support. This is the time for standards. It's the time to simplify very narrow things that allow students to demonstrate their knowledge and their ability to perform well at the next step. It's not about getting through all the chapters. It isn't about volumes of worksheets or homework. It isn't about lots of tasks. It's about you making the decision that is in law, your decision to determine if kids know the standards that you expect of them and they're prepared to have success at the next level. Let's take this as a moment to have a deep breath together, to focus on standards very specifically, to evaluate student success right now and their ability to be successful at the next level, and let's make sure we get all of our students moved forward. Tough decisions, not easy to get to. We try to accommodate a lot of interests in this, but we're going to move forward with it as a state and we're going to move together. We have 8 weeks to be amazing at this, or at least make tremendous progress on it. Let's do it well together. Thank you again for tuning in and for giving me that feedback last week. It was incredible and it fed directly into the decision making here. My dog Brandy thanks you for the cameo last week, and I thank you for tuning in. Let's move forward together, Washington.